Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all doing okay. I'm just going to go through a couple of housekeeping things and then I will pass over to our guest speaker today. So there are lots of tutorial groups in one. So I realise some of you, I will not be your usual progress coach. So just to explain, I am Emma, one of the other progress coaches. Please, guys, do not worry if you haven't been marked in for tutorial. Because we're using this platform today, it will just take a little bit longer for registers to be done, so they will be done by the end of the day. Also, the webinar is being recorded, so none of you are visible on camera. Any questions that you ask, I will read out, so just making you all aware that it is going to be recorded, and it will also be posted onto Classrooms at the end of the week, just in case you have any connection issues. Okay, so without further ado, guys, we have Michael here with us today, who is the head teacher of St. Peter's Academy, and he's going to talk to you today for your tutorial on Futures Week. So I will now hand over. Thank you.
Thank you, Emma, much appreciated. As Emma said, my name is Michael Astley. I'm the principal of St. Peter's C&V Academy, and there could be a few students that came to St. Peter's on this call, so hello to you and hello to everyone. In terms of what I currently do, I'm principal at St. Peter's, but I've got quite a lot of hats. I am involved in the sixth form. I'm a trustee of Potteries Education Trust, and Mark Kent, who's your principal, is one of the governors here at St. Peter's. I also chair the head teachers board for Prevent. I chair the Fair Access panel for Stoke-on-Trent, which places difficult to place students. I'm part of the Skills Advisory panel. I've been asked quite recently to join the Children's Improvement Board, in essence working to help the local authority in terms of children in general and social care. And I'm part of the Opportunities area, which is where Stoke-on-Trent get additional money in order to boost the outcomes and transition between primary and secondary. I'm on the Schools Forum, and for the Trust I lead the People Strategy, which is all to do with sort of HR. Now, the reason I've told you all of that is not to say I'm really important and to show off, because my main job is being head teacher, and that's the job that I love, and being a dad and a husband. But if there are any questions you want to ask about those areas, then I'm more than happy to answer them. As Emma has said, this is being recorded, so don't worry too much about making notes. But what I would say is, if at the end of this you've not written down one or two or three or maybe more things that you're going to look to do, be it do differently or just something you hadn't thought of, then I'm sort of wasting your time, and you know, this whole thing's been a waste of time. So it would be good. I'm not going to ask you to put them on the chat or to raise them, but I would advise that you do write a couple of things down that hopefully you'll take from this session. Questions wise, it's probably going to be easier if I take them at the end. Keep putting them in the chat, and Emma's going to keep an eye on them, and then we'll have a good 15 minutes at the end where you can put them on me rather than do it during, because then we might overrun and that would run into your other sessions. So that's a bit of an introduction from myself. And if I just tell you a bit about myself first, and I think it's quite important to have the context, and hopefully you can relate to some of that. I was born in somewhere called Stockton-on-Tees, which is in the northeast, but at quite an early age I moved to Greater Manchester, a town called Bolton. Family living arrangements, I've got well, I had two older brothers. One of my older brothers unfortunately passed away at quite a young age, but I've got an older brother, I've got a younger brother who's 10 years younger than me, and I've got a sister who's a few years younger than me. And I've been very fortunate to have parents who love me very much and who have been together the entire time. And I always had that support there. But what I would say about my dad, and you might have this with your own parents, or this is advice for when you become parents, if you become parents, is he was very supportive, but all of his support needed to be earned. So, for example, if I play cricket, and that's one of my real passions, if I hadn't done my jobs for the week, he wasn't giving me a lift to the cricket game. I had to sort myself another lift, or even there's occasions where I had to walk a couple of miles with my cricket bag because I hadn't put the washing up away. So he would always be supportive, but he could be quite tough as well. And the other thing that my dad taught me was he used to work in further education. So he used to work with 16 to 18-year-olds, so like yourselves, and his main subject was health and social care. And in essence, his job was to arrange placements for students of your age into care homes, into nurseries and old people's homes, and homes with students with learning disabilities, adults with learning disabilities. And right opposite our house, we lived on a main road, not particularly, you know, we weren't poor, we weren't rich. It was a 3-bedroom house. My mum and dad had one room, but 3 brothers all had to share the room. So even at the age of, when I came back to university and I was sort of 20, I was still on the top bunk, older brother on the bottom bunk, and my little brother got the short straw. He had the camp bed that he had to fold in half at the end of every day to make a bit more room so we could play in the room. But opposite our house, we had a care home, Watermillet Gardens, and my dad used to drag me there. I don't know why he didn't take the other kids. Maybe it's because he knew I'd end up with a job in education. But he used to take me there every Sunday, and I hated it when I was young because, you know, old people's home, you'd go. When I was 8, 9 years old, it would smell, all these wrinkly hands grabbing my cheeks and asking how I am and saying, who's this, even though I'd only met him the week before and the week before that and the week before that. But what I soon learned was actually, if you talk to these people, then they are very interesting people. And it made me a much better person in terms of caring for them, because it became quite clear that my visit and my dad's visit, some of them were looking forward to the entire week. And it also taught me, when I was sort of 11 and 12 years old, and I continued doing this every single Sunday, to prepare. And that's something that I've learned. So I realised that I would get much more out of the visit than they would if I did a bit of preparation. So I would find out, I'd say to my dad, well, who do you want me to sort of speak with? And he said, oh, we'll spend a bit of time with Jack. I think he's been quite down. Well, I knew Jack was a big Bolton Wanderers fan. So I'd look at how they got on at the weekend, the day before, and I could say about, oh, you know, John McGinley scored a fantastic goal, and I would learn about their areas. One of the women was massively into shows, and I'm not really into shows, but I did a bit of research on Les Miserables, so I could talk to her about that. So it's having that level of preparation for everything that you do in life, and even at a young age, I learned that quite quickly. In terms of my sort of friendship groups, and this is advice for you again, a very tight-knit group of friends, a lot of associates, a lot of people I sort of hang around with when I was a young age, and I knew they were. But in terms of people I could trust, there was only a couple. And be wary of, certainly in the age of social media, which I didn't have when I was growing up, but just be wary about who you tell what and what they're going to get from it, because it could be used against you. If you post something on social media, then it's out there, and I don't want to lecture too much about that, but I will pick up on that a little bit later on to hopefully give you some advice. But those tight group of friends, those 2 or 3 friends have served me very well, and I have them over time. In terms of university or school, I was never the best student at school and behaved okay, but in terms of intelligence, wasn't naturally intelligent and was nowhere near the most academically intelligent in my family. My older brother was a fantastic mathematician, and he got A's and everything. And then when I went to school, I think there was the expectation I was putting some of the higher sets, 2 higher sets than I should have been, because my brother was so good, he was a few years older than me, and struggled and had to build a lot of resilience. And I think resilience is the most important skill. Resilience and emotional intelligence are the most important skills for me that you can have, certainly in my line of work. So I learned to bounce back. I learned to work very hard and earn everything that I've achieved, both in school and beyond, and my family life. And it's the same in sport as well. I play sport, I play cricket, I played tennis when I was young, I played football when I was young, and it was always about being the best and treating it seriously. And some people would say, oh, you're treating this too seriously, it's only a laugh. When you lose in a school football game and you got beat 8-0, and well, everyone was laughing about it, we got absolutely stuffed. Well, I was gutted. Because I wanted, and I'd analysed my own game. Bit sad, possibly. I was never going to be a professional footballer, but I just wanted to be the very best at whatever I did. And I think team sports are very important as well. I know there's no sports particularly taking place at the moment with lockdown, but I would strongly encourage you to try and get involved as much as you can, be it sports or other clubs, whatever it is, and then get that sense of competition. Because if you don't have that sense of competition in your life, then you're not going to achieve everything that you're capable of doing. University-wise, I went to Keele University, and I've never really moved the Staffordshire and Derbyshire area as a result. So I went to university, spent 4 years there, got a degree in international history and educational studies, and my PGCE is in history and in sociology. And absolutely loved my time at university. and made the most of it. And some of you will be looking to go on to university in the next 2 years. Perhaps that some of your trustees won't thank me for saying this, but I want you to consider looking beyond Staffordshire for university. And too often I get frustrated with some of the students at St Peter's, where you look at university and they say, oh, Keele or Staffs. And that's often the response. Now, I went to Keele, it's a fantastic university, and I'd recommend Keele University. But don't just look at that. Broaden your horizon. Have a look at what else is out there. It's a huge decision for your life. Don't pick it because that's where your mates are going. Don't pick it's where your girlfriend going. If you're strong enough, you'll stay together. If you're not, then it wasn't meant to be anyway. So make sure if and when you move to university, you move to the right university for the right cause, and you take full advantage of that. So that's everything in terms of university. Another area I think is quite important from my point of view, and I think you'd appreciate a bit of information on, is some of the jobs I've had, not necessarily about education, because I can talk about that later on, but I had growing up. So at 13 years old, I got chatting. Someone my dad knew for the cricket club ran a milk round, said, oh, would you be willing to be a milk boy? And that was 2 hours every single morning, from 5:30 a.m. to 7:30 a.m. and I'd just be on the milk carts, picking up empties, delivering milk. And I did that Monday to Friday, and I did that for about 6 months. It was hard work, very hard work. Didn't pay particularly well, but again, it taught me resilience. It taught me that even if I wasn't feeling great, there's an expectation I'd get up. And it was the same in terms of being a paper boy on a Sunday morning, delivering papers. And it's not just about getting the money, it's about what you learn from that and the work ethic. And the other thing I had to do for that is, I'd still been a paper when I was sort of 16, 17, and I was going out with my friends on a Saturday night. And even when I was staying at people's houses, I'd have to get up incredibly early to make sure I was back to do my paper round and catch the early bus or whatever it was. And I was always very determined not to phone in sick and not to skive off that. And I sort of pride myself on my attendance. I've only missed a couple of school days in my entire life, and that's when I had my appendix removed. I think I had a week off for paternity with my first child. But other than that, it's something that I pride myself on. And I always think, and this is a slightly controversial comment, but often, your health is a state of mind. I think if you feel like, oh, I don't feel too great, you almost convince your body you don't feel too great. But it's about being resilient. And if you keep yourself really busy, I'm almost too busy to be ill sometimes, and then you just try and fight it through. And I'm not belittling people who are ill. I know a lot of people do get illness, but it's not something that I sort of recognise and have ever come across. Another job I did was working in a sports shop. So I did some work experience when I was in year 10, and the school said, sort yourself some out. So it was a sports shop in town, and I enjoyed that and got a job there. Ended up getting a job on a Saturday and a Thursday night. Not much, £2.30 an hour, but it wasn't necessarily about the money. And the other, if I talk about emotional intelligence now, the other thing I learned there is one of the most important things you can do in life is to make other people feel good about themselves. And people are not going to remember you in life for what you said to them or necessarily what you did to them, but they'll definitely remember how you made them feel. So even at 15 and 16 years old, and I was part-time working Saturday, and I got all the Sunday work, which was double pay, which was fantastic. But that's because sometimes I mashed out the ego of the manager. The manager was in his 40s, and I'd showed an interest in how the business was doing. I was never going to work in a sports shop all my life, but I knew it was in my interests to keep the manager sweet, because I'd get all the double pay on the Sunday. And I would say to him, so how are the sales figures looking? And if they weren't good, I'd say, all right, well, it has been a tough week, hasn't it? The weather's been a nightmare, Jack. So the weather's been a nightmare. So that's why it's not down. I'm sure we'll pick up next week. Is there anything I can do to help? If they went up, I'd say, oh, you've done really well, wouldn't you? It's just because you built this team. So even at 15 years old, and I was less than half his age, I realised quite quickly that boosting other people's confidence is fantastic for you and your own self-esteem, but you get so much more back from it. So my job now as a principal, my main job really is to make my staff feel like they're fantastic at their job and feel like they're almost like they're better at their job than they actually are. And then that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And then I say to them, your job is to make the students feel that they're better. They're brilliant at what they do. Boost them, boost them, boost them. Keep being confident. Pay compliments. Doesn't cost anything to pay a compliment. So I learned that quite early, from working in that sports shop and then having the customer relations, but also even when selling and someone bought a pair of trainers, and I might have been thinking, well, actually, those trainers aren't great, but they said, oh, I think, and I said, well, they look fantastic on you, they really suit you. And I wasn't saying that to be misleading, I was saying that so I get a sale, obviously, but also that's what they wanted to hear. So as long as you're not lying about it, telling people, boosting people and telling them what they want to hear for their interests, if it's going to be positive overall, is a real good piece of advice you'd give. When I was 19 years old, I had the opportunity, or I sought out the opportunity to coach some tennis in the United States, and that was through Camp America. And again, I went, and that was a fantastic experience. If you get the opportunity to go abroad, I funded it all myself, and I'd saved up all the money, so I wasn't reliant on the money, and didn't do much traveling after. Couldn't afford it really, but just went to New York and went to Canada, and then came back. And that was a fantastic experience. So if you get the opportunity to do any volunteering or anything abroad, I would strongly encourage you to do so. The other thing I did do when I came back from university, and even when I was at sixth form as well, when I wasn't working in the sports shop, because they only had so many hours for me, I'd just pick up other jobs, and it could be working on an assembly line or picking whatever it was, in order to keep my funds up, but also to build up my resilience as well. In terms of my working life, my first job was at Sandon High, which is now called Ormiston Meridian. And I went there as a history teacher because my degree was in international history and educational studies. And I've always been in my job, or my life really, at the right place at the right time. Now I think that's fortunate. Some would say, well, you make your own luck, and I think there's some truth in that as well. So quite early on in my teaching career, the head of history, unfortunately, became very ill with cancer, and I was made interim head of history about 6 weeks into my first job. And then it was a sink or swim situation. And what I learned from that was never being afraid to ask questions. There's nothing worse than someone that think they know it all when they don't. And even now in my position as a principal, all the time I'm asking questions of my vice principals and lots of other people just to make sure that they know what my thinking is and they can go with it. The other fantastic piece of advice, and I think this is fantastic even if I say so myself, is never make a decision angry. And that is the worst time. If you're in an emotional state, do not make a decision. Doesn't matter what that decision is. It could be a personal decision about your partner, about your home life. It could be a work decision. You need to rationalize it, and that's very important that you do that. So as I was at Sandon, became a head of year, started working with mentors, both in Stoke-on-Trent, and I was developing a cluster of mentors, but then moved to a school in Rugeley called Hadley Park. Went through the system there, head of humanities, assistant principal, vice principal, and I became a head teacher there at the age of 33. And the CEO of the trust at the time, put a big article out and celebrated the fact that it worked out I was the second youngest head teacher in England at the time. I don't know who the first one is. If I'd have known, I'd have probably tried to do something about it, so I've become the youngest. But that was something I was quite proud of. But even then, I was always asking advice. I was always asking for support and wasn't afraid to do that. I then moved to St. Peter's in 2015. By the time I'd left Hagley Park, I had been quite successful. I'd moved the school from, well, it's A to C, then it's now 9 to 4. So I'd got the school from 22% of students getting 9 to 4 in 2010 to 60% in 2015. So we trebled the results there. And at St. Peter's, came to a school that had its issues. It was in special measures. It was inadequate at the time. Now we're in a situation where we're good for teaching and learning, we're good for leadership and management, we're good for behaviour, we're outstanding for personal development. So we've moved that forward. And as I said earlier, that's been about bringing a team together and not being afraid to make a difficult decision, but always explaining your decisions. I think if you rationalise your decision and you say, well, I'm doing this because, and then you explain why you're making a decision, you explain in a way that people can't necessarily disagree with, or people understand your rationale. And you might say, look, you might disagree with this, but these are my reasons. And if your reasons are clear, then you've got a much better argument for doing something. And a lot of that is about preparation, is about attention to detail. I never enter a meeting cold. So when I first, and this is if you ever get to a situation where you are in a leadership position or a management position, the worst thing I did when I first became a head teacher at 33, and you're always learning life, and I'm still learning now, is I wanted to be, you know, a popular head teacher with the students, a popular head teacher with the staff, and I said my door's always open. And said to my personal assistant, my PA, anybody who wants to see me anytime about anything, they can come and see me. And it didn't work out well, because there is a book or a theory called monkey management. And I'll talk about that a little briefly, because again, hopefully you can pick something from that. Is monkey management is about a monkey on your back is like a problem that you've got. And what was happening is I was in my office, I'd start the day with a clean slate. And then someone would knock on my door, the head of music would come round, and I'd say, oh, come in, my door's always open. And they'd say, well, I'm having a real issue with my people picking music. So it would come in for pathways or options, and I'm going to students in music, and I really need to promote music. Is that something you can help with? And I'd say, yeah, I've got some brilliant ideas. Leave it with me, it's fine. So the head of music would come in with that monkey on the back, and the monkey was stressed about kids not picking options. He'd then leave that monkey in my office, and he'd wander off fine, thinking, great, Mr. Astley's going to sort it. Michael's going to sort it for me, perfect. And then half an hour later, another knock on the door. Oh, I'm pleased that you can see me, Michael. I'm having a nightmare with my bottom set year 9s, behaviours, you know, really, really poor. And I said, oh, that's fine. I used to be assistant head and deputy head for pastoral and behaviour management. That's one of my strengths. That's fine. I'll just write down the details of the group. I'll pick that up later. And that teacher would go, great, there's your monkey. And what happened was, by the end of the day, I got none of my own work done, and there was monkeys jumping, virtual monkeys, not real monkeys, virtual monkeys jumping all over my office. But my staff were quite happy, but I was then doing the work. And in a way, one, I couldn't do my own job because I was doing everyone else's job, and I wasn't even doing them a favour, because even though I said, oh, they left quite happy, well, superficially, they were happy. However, what I was saying to them by saying, leave it with me, which is a very dangerous phrase, leave it with me, I was in essence saying to them, well, I don't trust you to sort this problem. I'll sort it. And if you don't build that, I talk about resilience, I was actually taking the resilience and the professional responsibility away from those people. So be very careful when someone comes to you, and even if your friend's asking you a question, try and get a solution from them when they ask. So when they come to see you, say, look, I'm having a real problem. The first question is, well, what are you going to do about it then? What have you tried already? And it's got to a stage now where I don't have an open door policy. They see my PA, and my PA is fantastic, couldn't work without her. And she said, you know, I'd like to see Michael. Well, what would you like to see him about? Well, I know he's going to ask me what you've already done about it. What's your solution? So in the same way I'm solution focused, I try and instill on my friends and my family, my children, and my staff, be solution focused. What are you going to do about it? What have you tried? Why did it work? Why didn't it work? What are you going to try next? But be positive all the time. Fairness is very important. You know, don't be duplicitous in life. Don't be two-faced. Don't try and exert your power on people. You know, I can be quite flippant in some of my comments, but making people feel small in order to make yourself look powerful, not what I go for, and isn't helpful in life whatsoever. Always look to improve. Prioritize things. Sometimes, you know, learn. You can't do everything all the time. But when someone comes to see you or you've got a job to do, let them know it's not going to be done the next day. So even if it's your mum and she says, oh, you know, can you tidy your room? If you say, yeah, I'll do it, I'll tidy my room. Every 10 minutes, they're going to come back and say, you're not tidied your room. Why have you not tidied your room? Why have you not tidied your room? If you say to them, yeah, I'm just finishing what I'm doing here on the Xbox, I'm just finishing this piece of work, I'll make sure I do it before lunch, I'll probably do it about 11:30. Then between 9 o'clock when they ask you and 11:30, they'll leave you alone. They won't come and see you and say, why's your room not tidy? Because the answer is you'll do it at 11:30. The key is then you've got to do it. And that could be tidying your room, it could be something else. So, and that's about managing people's expectations of you. So manage people's expectations. And again, that works with your mates. Okay, you know, could you come round? Could you help me with this? If you say, yeah, I'll definitely help you. If you don't tell them when you're going to help them, every day it passes, they're going to think either you don't care about them, or they're going to be frustrated with you, or both. If you say to them, yeah, I can, but I've got to do this assignment, I've got to do this geography assignment, so I'm not going to be able to ring you until next week, then you've managed their expectations. Last couple of things, because we're going to come to some questions in a second, really. One of my phrases, trust but verify. I trust people, I empower people, but I do check. It doesn't do any harm to check now and again that they have done what they say they're going to do. In terms of my work-life balance, that's incredibly important to me. My family's important to me. My wife, I mean, sounds corny, but she's my rock. She allows me to focus on work, and she allows me, and I'm forever indebted to her, she allows me to be the fun dad. Frustrates her sometimes because she has all the remote learning, she has all the slog and the nagging the kids to do all the jobs. I've got 3 children, and I just come home and say, hey, let's go to the park, or let's put a film on. I've come with a load of popcorn, and so I kind of ruin that sometimes. But she allows me to be that. But my advice also is you fight for your relationships. If you've got a problem with a family member, if you've got a problem with a friend, work on it. Too often now relationships end because it's too much like hassle. And be kind to everyone. Don't hold grudges. Pointless. Don't hold grudges. If you've got an issue with someone, you explain to them why. You don't necessarily have to stay friends with them, but don't blank them. Don't hold grudges. Don't slag them off behind the back. Life's too short, and you've got to be the better person. And it doesn't do you any favours whatsoever to hold grudges. I don't see the point in people who do hold grudges. Last comment I'm going to make really is I spoke earlier about social media. And there is a film, I don't know if it's on Netflix or Amazon, it's one of them called The Social Dilemma. If you've not seen it, watch it. If you've watched it and you've not taken up or watch it again, it is fantastic, because if you know that Google and Microsoft and Apple and all of these people, they are taking over your lives and they are telling you what to think. And you've got to be aware of that, and you've got to manage that. And you can only do that if you're aware of how they do it. So Social Dilemma, I strongly advise that you watch. So I'm just going to summarise now in a couple of minutes with everything I've just said. See the best in everyone. Don't hold grudges. Never look down on anyone, ever. If it's your waiter, he's doing a job, you need him. People that look down on plumbers and manual workers, I can't plumb, I can't build a house, I can't tile. They're as skillful as me, they've just got a different skill. As I said before, never make a decision when you're angry. If you're taking a risk, fine, but make sure it's measured, make sure you know what the consequences are. Only have a small number of true friends. Don't kid yourself that you've got 10 brilliant mates, you've not. Nobody can have that many really, really close friends. Value money. But if you ever become a parent, kids aren't bothered about money, and kids aren't bothered about presents, they're bothered about time. So if I said to my son, and he'd probably say a tenner, but if I said, do you want a tenner, or do you want me to spend half an hour with you? He might say a tenner, but I know half an hour without my phone, with my 100% full attention, is the most important thing. And try and laugh as well. Try and enjoy your life every day. If you don't laugh at one thing in a day, you've not had a good day. So I would strongly advise you do that. And I think that's everything. And I've not given you loads of business speak, loads of quotes. I don't believe in all quotes of what other people say. You make what you want of your life, but just be positive in everything you do. So that's everything from me. Thank you very much for listening. I'm going to hand over back to Emma now. And if there's any questions about anything I've said, I'll do my best to answer them. If there isn't, thank you for your time. Emma.
Thank you, Michael. That was brilliant. Really, really interesting to hear all the advice you had and your own story. So thank you very much for sharing that with us. I can't see any questions in the chat box at the moment, so I'll just wait a minute or two just in case anyone's typing. Oh, no, there is. One's just popped up. Okay, so first question then from Millie. When did you know what career you wanted?
Okay, that's a fantastic question. Thank you for that, Millie. I wanted to be a probation officer, and I wanted to be a probation officer from about the age of 14. Once I'd given up and realised I wasn't good enough to play cricket for England, I wanted to be a probation officer at 14, and wanted to do that all through university, really. It's only when I got near the end of university, looked into it a little bit more, and looked at what it curtailed and what it involved, I thought, well, actually, I think teaching is probably the better way forward. And I did get in contact with the teaching. And the other thing I perhaps should have said is keep in contact with people that are going to influence with you. I'm still in touch with some of my old teachers from school. I'm still in touch with pretty much every head boy and head girl that I've ever been a head teacher of. I mean, one of them is my second in maths now, Mr. Pearl. So keep in touch with people to help you with that. But yeah, I'd say it was at university, probably about 20. Part of my coaching in America as well, that I decided I wanted to go into teaching, and it's something that I'd always wanted to do. But you've got to keep trying things out and not be afraid to change your occupation, but make sure you've got something in the background before you do so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next question from Evie. She says, when making a career decision, what kind of things should you consider that aren't financial stability or passion for it?
Well, what you have to do in it, and I suppose what you'll end up doing in that job. So you might have a real passion for the creative arts, but to be a graphic designer, what is a graphic designer? I mean, because all jobs, potentially, some jobs sound better than they are. So something like a graphic designer might find, well, it's fantastic, I'm going to be designing stuff all day. Well, no, it might not be. You might be stuck on a computer all day. And a quantity surveyor might sound quite dull, but actually you spend most of the time out and about, having conversations, researching documents. So have a proper understanding for that job. And the best way to get that understanding is, there are websites and all kind of things you can look at, but if you try and get yourself some volunteering of that job and just spend a week, or speak to someone, or speak to your progress coaches, and do you know anyone or who is involved in that? Can I speak to them? Can I spend a few days in there doing so? Find out exactly what it entails, because you'll be surprised what it does do. And the other thing is there is hundreds and hundreds of jobs out there that you probably don't even know exist. And I do get frustrated sometimes with my children when I say, what do you want to be when you're older? And some of my more intelligent students, they only really say, do you want to be a doctor or a teacher? And I say, well, is that it? You cannot think of anything else. And actually, maybe that's a problem and we're working on that with our careers. Maybe we don't tell them enough about all the different jobs out there. So find out exactly what it entails, both at a starter level, but what it can become, and also what and it's kind of linked to money, but what your progression path in that job will be. Are you going to hit a ceiling of that job in terms of promotions after 3 or 4 years, or could you move on and on and on year on year and potentially become global with that?
Thank you. Okay, next question from Pippa. She asks, how do you deal with a bad day?
Just repeat that one, sorry.
How do you deal with a bad day? With
the what of day?
Bad. So if you've had a bad day, how do you deal with it?
Oh, a bad day. Sorry, how do I deal with a bad day? I try not to have a bad day, which is easy to say. I offload on my wife a lot of it, verbally, not physically. That would be completely inappropriate. But and the car on the way home, I value that drive. I mean, I live about half an hour from home. I wouldn't want to live any closer. I wouldn't really want to live any further away. But I go home and I say, I've had a great day, this. Then I relax, try and turn off completely. And I am lucky I am able to turn off from work. But then after I've turned off, after a couple of hours, either later on that night or even the next day, I say, right, how am I going to stop that happening again? Because 9 times out of 10, a bad day is of your own making. It's very rare that something completely random happens. It's usually of your own making. It's because you didn't prepare something for it. It could have been because you made a decision angry, which is my advice on that as well, not to do that as well. So analyze what you did, what you're going to do different, what you would have done different, but also make it right as well. So if that bad day, from my point of view, was an upset member of staff, or an upset child, or I'd made a bad decision, make it right the next day. Go and see that child, apologise to him for what you've done, and then ultimately they'll apologise to you and say, you know what, that didn't go very well yesterday, did it? And to say that to a member of staff and be big enough and brave enough and not be stubborn. People talk about being stubborn as a strength. I'm not convinced it is being stubborn as a strength. I think being determined and knowledgeable and knowing why you do something is a strength, but you need to be more adaptable than being stubborn. So get over it quickly as you can, put it to bed, realise what you're going to do different, but then make it right as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. So has anybody else got any other questions? I'll just wait a minute in case any others pop up. We haven't got any more going through, so I'll just say thank you so much, Michael. That's been really brilliant advice that you've shared with our students, and I know they will find that hugely beneficial, and I'm sure, guys, you will at least take one thing from this talk. So there's no more questions popping up, so thank you very much. I'll let everybody go now, and Michael, I'll let you get going as well. Thank you. Bye,
Okay,
everyone.
wonderful. And just say good luck with everyone for the rest of the year with your remote learning and everything. And thanks for having me. It's much appreciated. Take care. Thank you.
There's lots saying thank you in the chat, just so you know. All right, take care then. Bye.
Okay, thanks. Bye bye.